is Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, broadcasting live from the Fixing America Command Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, here is your host, Steve Laffey.
Hey, good afternoon, America. Stephen Laffey here. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're at LaffeyRadio.com. We're here finishing up our first full week. Hopefully get working out some of the glitches that I've caused. We had a great night last night here in Fort Collins with trick-or-treating. We were visited by a green alien. The kids ran around the house. Three of them. Really, there's really three little ones who still have fun doing this. And we passed out lots of candy, and it turned out to be a great night. There was just this green alien that showed up, and anyway, I got a lot of milk duds out of it, and I impose, as usual, a tax, a toll. When the kids get this stuff at the end of the night, I look in and say, I need 10%. And we'll be talking about taxes and tariffs here on the show today. But I had a lot of milk duds. And I had a milk dud, I don't think, in 5 years. Milk duds are great unless you have, on my side over here, I have 4 root canals. So I chew over here on the milk dud side. I remember having these 4 root canals, which is 8 treatments, and going back to work at Morgan Keegan when I was actually running a lot of the firm and having to go back into meetings and just giving people the thumbs up. Because I couldn't talk. But so I stayed on the right-hand side of my mouth. And today we'll talk with the whole mouth, but we're going to talk about energy today. We're going to talk about energy independence. We're going to talk about the last 40 years. We're going to talk about the future. And we're going to talk about how we get there, because it's been a total disaster. I mean, I can remember a college course. I took one college course at Bowdoin College, probably 1983, 84, 83, I think. It's my senior year. I took a course in oil and understanding oil and energy. And it was taught by this gigantic guy who'll be the subject of Monday's discussion. He was an extremely obese guy, very, very smart. Always came into class with his dog, and took him a while to get down the stairs in this big auditorium. And he was so physically lazy that he only had a pointer. He had this slideshow that someone would set up, and he would just click and point and talk. And he would point at this slide. But I remember him telling us, he taught me a lot of things. When I got to teach at the University of Rhode Island, I taught the top finance course there for a number of years, thanks to Ed Mazie, dean of the business school and the president of the school. I remember that class had no written test. It was all oral at the end. And he was telling us, this is what you're going to do in life. You're going to make oral presentations. And I that's what I did with my students. It was really no written exam. Saved me a lot of time, by the way, but a lot of oral presentations. But he said one thing about oil that I remember. This was, say, 83. And I think the Amoco Cadiz, if you're old enough to remember or look it up, was the first real big oil spill that I can remember. It was I'm guessing it was 1978. It was in France, off the coast of France. And he was called in, this professor. He was called into the Amoco Cadiz to advise them what to do with this giant oil spill. 60, 70 million barrels of oil spilled on a ship just crashed off the coast. And he came back and he told us what he told them. So it's about 6 years, 7, 8 years later. And he says, I told them just to leave it alone. So this guy's got this PhD. He's an oil expert. He's teaching this top-level course at Bowdoin College in the environment. He's been called into all these different oil spills, but the Amoco Cadiz was his biggest one. And we're sitting there, and someone asked, like, what do you mean leave it alone? He said, well, they had these soldiers out there, and they were going to walk on the beach, and they were going to take this oil, which would dissipate. Much of it would dissipate over time, over a short period of time. And they were going to pound it into the ground all over the beaches, which means it would it would take 20, 30, 40, 50 years to dissipate, get the oil off the coast. And so nobody listened to him. Because politically, this is the kind of the conversation we're going to have today, because politically, they had to do something. The politicians in France, the people who were funding it, the Amoco Cadiz people had to pay for it probably. The world was watching this oil spill. And of course, they had to do something. So they called the soldiers, and they walked all over the beach. And go call up a story today, and I bet you'll find that the problem with the beach is that there's a bunch of oil right about 2 inches below that soil, and it can't get out. The rest of it's gone. I think people are having, fun times over there, and they're going to the beach, and they don't even know it's there. But politically, again, not what common sense would dictate, politically, they had to do something. So they sent the soldiers in and they trapped all over the ground and caused more of a disaster. And politically is why I guess we don't have a national energy policy. It's not really understandable to all of us. You know, we don't outsource our drinking water to Bolivia. They're not a safe source of water. Even if they were getting it here, we have our own water. Even within states, we have our own water. Generally speaking, we do have some instances, but generally speaking, we have our own water in our own states, not even across the country. But when it comes to energy, and particularly oil, this is one of the things that's been bothering me for such a long time. Because I'm at 51 now, I'm 51 years old. And ever since I was a little kid, I remember the first oil embargo, 73, I was 11. I remember the odd and even license plate numbers. You could only get, if your license plate ended in an odd number, you could go on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Even, I guess you got an extra day, right? So 7 days a week, whatever it was. And there were lines, and Nixon was talking about it, and then Ford was talking about it, and Reagan was talking. I mean, it goes on. Jimmy Carter, who actually, he made a clip in our movie, Fixing America. He was talking about it. Everybody's been talking about it, and nothing has been done. The politics of it have gotten in the way. Our military industrial complex has gotten in the way. We don't calculate the right cost of it. But here we are in America today. And by the way, we're Steve Laffey at LaffeyRadio.com. Tell your friends about it. We're putting out new Laffey Minutes all the time. Just put one out today. We got this other series we're starting. I'll film another one of these today in our green room. The Fixing America Presents series will continue. We're at Facebook. We've been getting some good following there. If you got something you want to say to us, say it on. Go to Facebook. Send us an email right now. We'll be taking calls over time. We're going to start building that up. We'll even have a guest or two over time. But we're just building up the show. So on Facebook, we're still Laffey Radio. We're tweeting the same time we're putting on Facebook at Laffey Radio, so you can follow us there at Laffey Radio. And tell your friends about it. You have to send the whole show. Send some of these clips around. But we've got to find solutions to this energy problem that goes back to OPEC. And OPEC, if you don't know, and I don't want to talk down to everybody out there, but most people heard of OPEC, may not know what it is. OPEC is mostly Middle East, but not all Middle East. Venezuela is a country. They controlled in 1973, and they figured it out that they controlled a lot of the oil and enough to be the tipping point. And that's a thing that people don't understand. There are many people, including some key people on TV today, Bill O'Reilly over at Fox News, who seem to think that the oil market's controlled by one or two people or just the speculators. It's really not. There are so many people involved in the oil industry. Heck, 7 people of Nixon's cronies couldn't control the message on Watergate, right? So when you have thousands of people, you really don't have a conspiracy. You don't have people controlling it. What you have is a commodity. And commodity prices, when there's a slight bit more demand than supply, on the percentage basis, prices can stay a lot higher. When there's a little bit more supply than demand, whether it's the corn market or the oil market, prices can plummet because of the nature of the way these supply and demand curves work. They're not exactly like buying a toaster. Toaster, different supply and demand curves, different way prices can move, but they're all in competition. Talking earlier today, some people think that, the price at the pump is kept high by British Petroleum or 5 oil companies or OPEC. Not so. That market operates a lot like buying Fritos and corn chips and, Fig Newtons and so forth in the store. And candy, for example. You can't they look around at the other prices and start to lower and raise them on the margin. So there is no great collusion. There is a great collusion elsewhere, though, a great lobbying effort in Washington by the giant oil companies and a lobbying effort by OPEC, by Saudi Arabia. They're the great swing producer, and it's becoming less important that they are the great swing producer. They control about 11% of the world's oil supply. I think it's about 11. And so on the margin, they're the ones that have the least amount of people that need the oil. I mean, Venezuela's got to keep pumping. And so when they meet in the OPEC meetings, they're the person who says, well, we really don't care. We need prices high. That's great. Keep them high. Try to set the price of oil if you can, but we're going to pump every barrel because otherwise our people will riot. Saudi Arabia and the way they structure their country in a terrible way to keep people down and oppressed, they don't really have that problem yet. That's something, another show. They're going to have that problem, but they don't have that problem yet, the way they run things. So, and they've got some of the best crude. So they can pump a lot more. They can increase the quantity of oil they're producing, some think, by 1.2 million barrels a day very quickly. So they're sort of the swing producer. But we've had some great things happen to us in our country. You know, before we get into that, it's important to look back on where the energy comes from, where it goes. And I brought in my little cheat sheet here because I can't always remember. But we've got to talk about how much energy we're actually using in America. We use 95 quadrillion BTUs a year. Means nothing to you. It's an awful lot of oil. How do we use it? The sources of it? Petroleum's about 35%. Natural gas is 26%, and that's going up dramatically. Coal is 17%, and that's about to go down dramatically, which is a disaster we'll get into. Renewable energies is 8.9, and that's going to be growing. And nuclear energy is 8.1. But the important thing also is, where does it go to? For example, petroleum almost all goes to transportation. About 93% of the petroleum goes to transportation, and only about 1% goes to produce electric power. Coal, for example, about 9% goes to industrial, 1% goes to residential, 91% goes to electric power. So when you turn on the lights today, turn on the electricity, you're getting a lot of that energy from coal. But that's where a lot of it goes. It's probably 40%, I think. It's 40% of when you turn on the electricity. You get 20% from nuclear and so forth. So it comes from different sources, our energy, and it goes to different sectors: the transportation, the industrial, the residential, and of course the power, electric power sector at your home mostly, and at your office. So we got to look at that. One of the things that's happening today is this great benefit that we're getting from what we call shale oil, or we call natural gas, and it's found in shale deposits. And without getting too complicated, a man named Mitchell, who is the father of this, it's always been there, this natural gas. And finally, we've been able to get it out by fracking, by putting enormous pressure and dumping enormous amount of water with some other fluids deep into the ground to puncture through these holes, rocks, and get this stuff to flow quickly out. The benefit has been huge. I mean, we have gone in this country, and we are going to go with natural gas in a way that we never thought of even 7 years ago, even 8 years ago. We are going into a part of our country where we are and will be, if we want to be, the low-cost producer with the competitive advantage. Two terms you learn in business school. We're going to be the low-cost producer of energy, especially natural gas. We've been blessed to have these giant oceans on each side of us and relatively friendly countries to the north and to the south. And together, we can be energy independent. The biggest thing that has to happen is that all of us have to take some part of the responsibility, because what's happening today is that different special interest groups, it could be, for example, we'll talk about the Keystone Pipeline, but the Keystone Pipeline, there are people even in Nebraska, which is a fairly conservative state, they're building like little farmhouses on top of where the pipeline's supposed to go. The Keystone Pipeline is to take oil, heavy tar sand oil, higher pollutants coming out of it when you get it, I suppose, when you burn it and refine it. Take it from Canada, Alberta, all the way down into Nebraska. The rest of the pipeline, I guess, has been built. And it's been stopped by Barack Obama. It's been a total disaster to stop this for a number of reasons. In fact, I think we have Barack Obama in one of these clips. I'm going to start. Sometimes I go through the show, I don't even play the clips we have, but it's an important clip to play. And it's a good way to start off here talking about the Keystone Pipeline, because it's been blocked by the administration, by the Obama administration. It's going to produce a couple of million jobs over the years to come. A lot of people will work on it. It's going to help our country be energy independent. And by the way, I guess I'll just take this tack right here. Energy independent, if you want to include Canada and even Mexico, that's okay with me. When they've got a lot of resources, we can help Mexico get a lot of resources out of the ground. They're government controlled. Canada has exported almost all of its oil and gas to America for years, and we're running the risk of them sending it elsewhere, which we don't want to do. But I think that clip, I think that clip is Obama. It's clip 5, I think, boss, if you would play it.
I know there's been, for example, a lot of controversy surrounding the proposal to build a pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, that would carry oil from Canadian tar sands down to refineries in the Gulf. And the State Department is going through the final stages of evaluating the proposal. That's how it's always been done. But I do want to be clear. Allowing the Keystone Pipeline to be built requires a finding that doing so would be in our nation's interest. And our national interest will be served only if this project does not significantly exacerbate the problem of carbon pollution. The net effects of the pipeline's impact on our climate will be absolutely critical to determining whether this project is allowed to go forward. It's relevant.
Well, here's the problem, Mr. President. And by the way, he's talking to a bunch of kids who were clapping at George Washington University last year. This is during the campaign to try to get votes. At the beginning of the show, I said, but Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're at LaffeyRadio.com. I said it's a political problem. Instead of telling these kids the truth about where this oil's coming from and where it's going to go anyway, he talked about climate change. He talked about global warming, carbon pollution. It is true. It's very true that the tar sands of Canada have a heavier, more sulfur-rich, more pollutants coming out of that oil than what comes out of, say, Saudi Arabia and some parts of the United States with a light, sweet crude and so forth. It has to be refined more and there'll be more pollutants. True. What's equally true is that America, while we consume the most energy, 24% of the energy in the world is consumed here in America. Cheap energy is what's going to drive our economy. What's also true and never spoken is that oil's coming out of the ground. It's going to China eventually. It's going to come to America on a rail. And let's go through that. I mean, this is what the president doesn't talk about. He doesn't talk about how, here it is right here. Canada, here's an article just the other day, New York Times actually. Canada is quadrupling its rail loading capacity to as much as 900,000 barrels a day, up from 180,000 barrels a day. They're going to take this oil out of the ground. It's going to cost $5 more per barrel. But remember, oil, it's like $100 a barrel. This stuff is in the ground. They can get it out now when oil is, let's say it's not, different forms of oil are priced differently, whether it's Texas West crude or North Sea oil or so forth. Let's just say it's $100 a barrel today. Well, $5 more per barrel to get this stuff to places is okay for them. They're going to do it. By the way, you might have read about some of this oil already being transported east and west, going to Saskatchewan, going toward British Columbia, going through Quebec. Derailments and innocent people killed, dead. You probably saw the explosion in Quebec. That was oil coming through the town. There's going to be so much more rail traffic. It is quicker to build the rails and so forth. And it's one of these things that it's going to happen anyway. So this crude's going to get produced. China has been in Canada, China's largest oil company, Petrobras, I guess it is. They bought a large a Canadian energy company. All holy heck broke loose in Canada. But in the meantime, as we talked earlier about the Prime Minister of Japan, he was in the United States. Well, it's not reported in the news because they only report, stuff they want to report. But a very important point is that before he went back home to Japan, Prime Minister Abe visited Canada, sat down with Stephen Harper, guy who runs Canada, and talked about how Japan needs this energy too. So all these pollutants are coming out into the air. And along the way, China is producing more coal plants, more coal generating plants at the tune of 1 per week. Their pollution is terrible. Their pollution is going over the ocean into Japan, and it's coming to California. It's going to come anyway. But we need to produce all of this energy that we have. We're going to talk about solar. We're going to talk about all these different things we got to produce. But we need all of it. We need all of us to agree as Americans that it's not going to be great for every one of us every day. There's always going to be problems. But for the President of the United States to say he's concerned about all these pollutants when it's going to be polluted anyway, we might as well take it. We cannot, and this is a national defense concern. We cannot allow Canada, and I mean politically, to start sending this stuff other countries. We need it here. It'll keep our energy prices low. We'll be back to talk about that. This is Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're going to be right back. We've got some great clips to play, and we're going to be solving this problem. But one of it's going to be no more politics like the president's playing right now. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages. Obesity in the United States has been increasingly cited as a major health issue in recent decades. While many industrialized countries have experienced similar increases, obesity rates in the U.S. are among the highest in the world. Join us Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern as Laffey breaks down the dangers of obesity, not only to our citizens, but to our nation's checkbook. Get off the couch and trash the Doritos. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school,
In math,
I learned that I'm ugly and useless.
trash.
And in gym,
In biology,
I learned that I'm pathetic
that I'm fat
and a
and
joke.
stupid.
In history,
Today
I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I
I
make
learned
people
that I'm fat and
sick.
stupid.
And in
And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell.
That I'm a loser.
and in
In chemistry, I learned that no one likes
In
me.
biology,
In chemistry,
I learned that I'm fat and stupid.
That
In
I'm
English,
fat
And in math,
because
I learned that I'm trash.
the only thing I didn't learn in school today
The only thing I didn't learn today.
the only thing I didn't learn
Is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
So you take the mouse and click over there, and then you can choose someone you want to call.
My niece. I click here?
Uh-huh.
This is Louisa. Recently, she got help going online to chat with her family back home.
Okay, so then you want to hit that green button.
This is her first time on the internet and her first time seeing her niece in 5 years. Louisa doesn't know what to expect.
Luisa? Oh my gosh. There she is. This is amazing.
It's so good to see you. You look so pretty.
But this is definitely way beyond.
Oh my gosh.
See what the internet can help you do at everyoneon.org or call 1-855-387-9166 to find a free training class near you. That's 1-855-387-9166.
Oh, I've missed you.
Oh, me too.
Brought to you by Connect to Compete and the Ad Council.
I'm always up for a challenge. It's the feeling of accomplishment that drives me. And there's no better challenge than serving part-time in the Coast Guard Reserve. I protect my country, work with the best and brightest. I get great pay and benefits in return. The Coast Guard Reserve is important work. I get to serve my community, and it's always rewarding.
If you were born ready, there's a new challenge waiting for you. Learn about serving part-time at gocoastguard.com/reserve.
And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
This whole thing is maddening. Maybe we just need a deadline, hard and fast, like we did with the moon. In 10 years, we will go to the moon, and in 10 more years, be somewhat bored by doing so. We just need the president to lay out reasonable time parameters.
At the end of this decade, in the year 1980, the United States will not be dependent on any other country for the energy we need.
By 1985.
By the year 2000.
Within a matter of 3 or 4 years, if we'll just get after it and treat this like it's important.
Another great goal. To replace more than 75% of our oil imports from the Middle East by 2025.
You know, I try to laugh. Because Jon Stewart's a pretty funny guy. But then I hear all these voices again from my childhood all the way up. You know, I hear Jimmy Carter. I hear Richard Nixon. I hear Reagan. I hear every president. There's a clip of every president. And even Jon Stewart, a very smart man, but and a very funny guy, but he gets it. He gets that this has to actually change. That it's a joke. And we've been trying to talk about it. It's basically all politics. And the politics is simply this. It's Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're on Laffey Radio. We're talking about a very serious topic here today. We're talking about energy. And we're talking about the fact that it must simply be that our elected officials, especially our presidents, love to talk about a topic that you all want to hear. We all want energy independence. Not all, I guess. There's some people who don't. But generally, regular folks out in America know we have the energy and want us to go get it. And we don't explain to them this one really important thing. It's going to be dirty. It's not pretty. It's not an oil painting. It's not, Gene Andrews' oil painting back here. Energy's a dirty thing. Solar's not clean. What are you going to do with those solar panels? I got them on my roof. What are we going to do with them at the end? Batteries. What do you do with batteries? Things blow up. No one wants them near their house. Got this whole thing with fracking, and fracking is just huge. But we've got president after president. I mean, boss, if you could let's play Bush 41. It's clip 1. This is the older Bush speaking about oil independence. Go ahead.
There is no security for the United States in further dependence on foreign oil.
So he failed. He's still alive, so he failed. Then you got clip 2. Let's just go clip 2 on oil independence. That's the other Bush.
This country can dramatically improve our environment, move beyond a petroleum-based economy, and make our dependence on Middle Eastern oil a thing of the past.
Failed. Didn't do it. Won't do it. Great speech. We could have played the clapping for 5 minutes. Everybody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to do it. You know, in fracking, for example, I've talked about this. You know, fracking is unbelievable. The stuff that's coming out of the ground, we're gonna go from very little in natural gas, and we've got a cost advantage of natural gas in this country now that's 75% cheaper than what they're paying in the United Kingdom. 75% cheaper. So when you're turning on your lights today, and we went through our magic diagram here, you know, the natural gas, almost all of it goes to electric, a lot of it goes to electric power. Most of it goes, that's what we're going to be using it for. We can use it for other things, though. For example, natural gas on trucks. This is T. Boone Pickens' idea from a long time ago, and it's finally starting to happen, and we need to talk about it. We've got lots of trucking companies that are finally, because what had to happen, see, when you run a business, if natural gas prices are only down a little bit, and you're looking at natural gas versus oil, and it's 20% different, and you're going to try to put a natural gas engine on a giant 18-wheel truck, you're probably not going to do it. But we have like a giant differential. It's about... natural gas equivalent is about $1.50 a gallon versus $3.20 or $3.30, whatever you're paying today, wherever you're listening from, different state taxes and so forth, different refinery costs, especially the crazy people in California who run that joint, who always have the highest prices. So it's double. So it's a 50% reduction of what they're going to pay to put it in their 18-wheel trucks. But there's a huge fixed cost to do this. But finally, because, and this is what's happened, the price of natural gas has stayed low, much lower than other countries, much lower equivalent than gasoline or diesel fuel, for example. So now they're saying, let's go forward with it. And right here, we just, truckers are tapping into the gas boom. Home improvement retail Lowe's. Procter & Gamble has 7% of its trucks on gas. UPS is going to put 1,000 natural gas trucks in by the end of the year. FedEx. So last year, about 1% of our 18-wheelers were on natural gas. This year, 5%. Next year, 5% will be on it. So it's going up. And it's a lot cheaper. And by the way, here's the statistics. This is why this works. This is why this works in spades. When you look at our magic diagram over here, 1% of all the vehicles on the road when you go out today, I know it'll seem like more, are 18-wheel trucks. But they use 20% of the fuel. Where does oil go to, remember? Remember the whole diagram? Oil, petroleum, goes 90-some-odd% to transportation. If we can switch 20% of that over the next 7 years to natural gas at half the price for truckers, cleaner environment. By the way, carbon dioxide emissions down 12% last year, down 3% last year, down 12% last 4 or 5 years, and down to levels not seen since 1994. Where's President Obama on this? We're not going to stop China from polluting right now, not what we're doing. But switching to natural gas makes a lot of sense, and they're going to go do it. Here's the caveat. We're about to let all this natural gas leave the country. Natural gas, by the way, is a local market. It's much more local. It's hard to transport. You've probably seen these LNG terminals or LNG carriers. You got to take the natural gas. You got to shrink it down by freezing it. Then you got to ship it somewhere. Then you got to expand it and let none of it blow up. So it's very hard to do. It's very costly. It's not like a pipeline. It just keeps flowing through there. So there's much more regionalized markets in natural gas. Right now, there are 16 proposals to take natural gas and move it out of the country. That means that cost differential that we have, that Dow Chemical, U.S. Steel, Aluminum Company of America, manufacturing plants in America, we got to change our relationship with China, but we can, even despite of that, we can bring manufacturing jobs here because we get the low cost price. Run it off natural gas. Switch to natural gas. We'll have more jobs. We'll have a couple of million more jobs over the next 30 years and just fracking for natural gas, just in the industry. But the jobs that we'll have in other industries, because we're the low-cost producer, that's where people are going. Whirlpool, a lot of energy goes into making, washers and dryers. Not much labor, by the way. As my friend Bill reminded me on the phone this morning. Not much labor. But the energy cost going down, that's where we have to go to. In the meantime, one of the problems that we have, that along the way, when I go to the diagram and look at it and say, wow, look at all these good things that are happening. We just started producing more in our country of domestic oil than we're importing. We're not anywhere close to getting out of the game of not importing any oil from Saudi Arabia and the other countries in the Middle East and outside of our, say, North American alliance, we could call it. But we can do it. But what's happening instead? 17% coal. They're going to attack coal. Coal is cheap. It's 40% of what you do in your electric power. Most coal goes to natural power. What are they doing? Unfortunately, here's what they're doing. They're passing laws to shut down the coal industry. So we're going to shut down our coal industry. Here's an article. New coal-fired units, this just happened a couple weeks ago, will now be required to meet a limit of 1,100 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour. Currently, the most efficient coal-fired plants emit at a rate of 1,800 pounds per megawatt hour. That's it. Forget about all the jobs in Kentucky and West Virginia and all the places where we have coal. That's going to directly limit one giant source of energy in our country. So as natural gas goes up and coal goes down, we don't get the same benefit as that we were still producing coal. And believe me, we need clean coal. We got to find better ways to, and they've done a lot of things with coal there's not the acid rain problem when I was a kid coming out of Ohio and landing in New Hampshire and Vermont and Rhode Island. It's not the same anymore. There's a lot of things, and we've got to get them to do more. We do need regulation on that. Don't get me wrong. But when you say that right now, that at 1,800 is the number that the best coal plant can do, the least amount of pollution, but the new law is 1,100, you're going to shut the industry down. And so the only way to become energy independent And that's what we want to do, right? Every poll says so. The only way to do it is use all of our resources. And one of them is coal. And it does have more pollutants than natural gas. But again, we're cleaner than we were any year since 1994. And we'll be cleaner if we still have some more coal-fired plants and our competitors for the jobs that are missing, the millions of jobs that Americans don't have. You know, it's great to say we train everybody to sell coffee at Starbucks. Those aren't the high-paying jobs. Manufacturing jobs are. Those are the ones that people are missing in this country. There's the 5.6 million jobs we've lost or so since 2001. So here's China and the World Trade Organization. They're producing a new coal-fired plant every week, and we're going to shut ours down. We're going to lose our competitive advantage. That's the crime. That's the politics. You've heard the speeches. Hey, let's play another one. How about Bill Clinton? Clip number 3, boss, if you could play. Let's hear him. Oil independence. Go ahead, Bill.
We need a long-term energy strategy to maximize conservation and maximize the development of alternative sources of energy.
But we don't have one. We don't have a plan. Oh, sure, in 2007 they passed a bill with Bush. It's not really a plan. And the plan is pretty easy. I mean, who knows we don't have a plan? T. Boone Pickens knows we don't have a plan. Let's play clip 6. Clip 6, T. Boone Pickens, who's in charge?
Well, who's in charge of those questions in the government? I mean, here we have the Keystone Pipeline, and that is, I'm told, is a decision that will have to be made by the State Department, not by the Department of Energy. So I'm not sure who is in charge of energy in America.
Is that part of the problem, sir, that we don't have a comprehensive plan and one person really leading the effort, or one body leading the effort?
We've never had an energy plan for the United States. We're the only country in the world without an energy plan, and we use more energy than any other country in the world. It's time to have a plan, and that plan would be very simple. Get on your own resources, and we have the resources.
Get on your own resources, and we have the resources. That's the plan. So we've got oil that's coming out of the ground in much greater increments. We've got natural gas, and with the fracking that we're doing, and believe me, we need regulation of fracking, and the big oil and gas companies that are operating in the United States have to have some sensitivity, both to where they locate them. I mean, sometimes they locate these things, it seems like right next to a politician's house, or right next to some 80-year-old lady's house, so that will be the frame for the nightly news. So instead of like all this great things that happen, and we focus in on Matt Damon's movie, whatever it flopped, thankfully, but you know, or this guy who made this movie about natural gas. He drives around with a handheld camera, and he just has, and all the houses seem to be blowing up because they're so close to natural gas. But we allow the big gas companies sort of play into that, instead of figuring out a way that, you know, we're going to get 98% of this. I understand that. But what we're missing is T. Boone Pickens' plan. We got the resources, let's use them. And here's T. Boone Pickens, and if you don't know who he is, well, if you don't know who he is, you're probably not listening to the show. He's one of the most famous oil men, wildcatters in the United States of America. He's put hundreds of millions of dollars into investments in oil and gas. And he really has been talking about the stuff we've been talking about today, too. He's been one of the guys really pounding away at taking at least part of our transportation fuel from diesel, which is, let's say, gasoline diesel, on 18-wheel trucks and moving it to natural gas. But if we move that to natural gas, and we take 20% of the transportation fuel out, and then we still harm coal so that we don't have the coal, which is cheap, or we harm our nuclear. We haven't talked about nuclear. We probably won't talk about it a lot today because nuclear is about, you know, it's 20% of our electricity, but there's like 104 nuclear power plants in our country. It's a tough one to talk about because we planned them so badly over the years, made them all different, unlike France. You know, they make them all the same. So people, they know the plant they have. Heck, we even got one nuclear power plant that was built when they didn't know there was a fault in California, earthquake fault. Now it's sitting on top of one. So here we're waiting for the day when we have the earthquake there. But nuclear can't go away tomorrow morning, but it's kind of scheduled because it's too hard to build one in this country because we just don't have the will to do so. But coal, we go back to coal. That's the thing that, I mean, someone has to explain to the American people that again, we know that there's pollution. We know that something's going to blow up. We know that we can't just be taking the tops off every mountain. But we need giant jobs in America. And we can't be energy dependent when we take one of our major sources and kill it. We're going to be back with some more solutions and talk about solar, play some more clips. It's Steve Laffey. Steve Laffey's Fixing America. We're on a roll here. I don't know if we're going to get it all through, but let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Steve Laffey's Fixing America returns after these commercial messages.
Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m. to give Dad his medicine. At 6 a.m., I make his breakfast. At 7 a.m., I shower. I start laundry at 8. At 10, we go for a walk. Every day, I wake up at 5 a.m.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers for advice, tips, and support. Together, let's help each other better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Training is about more than muscle. It's about inner strength. So I push myself. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. I train with the best. A team that shares my drive and commitment. We collect intelligence, guard our shores against drug smugglers, and keep our waterways safe, because our nation expects more.
If you expect more, maybe you were born ready. Find out at GoCoastGuard.com.
This is Nnamdi Asamoah. I play football for the Philadelphia Eagles, but what I do off the field with United Way might be more important. I'm a volunteer tutor and mentor. Why? Because over 1 million kids a year drop out of school, and that's not okay. It takes 12 years to create a graduate, but it takes about the same time to create a dropout. And the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be me, or it could be you. Studies show that if we get to these kids earlier, their chances are better. And kids who read well by 3rd grade are more likely to graduate. So join me in United Way. Suit up and take the pledge. Become a volunteer reader, tutor, or mentor. Because when a child succeeds, we all succeed. Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge at unitedway.org. Brought to you by United Way, the Ad Council, and the National Football League.
Obesity in the United States has been increasingly cited as a major health issue in recent decades. While many industrialized countries have experienced similar increases, obesity rates in the U.S. are among the highest in the world. Join us Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern as Laffey breaks down the dangers of obesity, not only to our citizens, but to our nation's checkbook. Get off the couch and trash the Doritos. Only on Steve Laffey's Fixing America. And now, back to the Fixing America radio program with your host, Steve Laffey.
We will continue support of research leading to development of new technologies and more independence from foreign oil.
This intolerable dependence on foreign oil.
New standby emergency program to achieve the independence we want. We will break the back of the energy crisis. We will lay the foundation for our future capacity to meet America's energy needs from America's own resources.
Well, there you have it. Carter called it intolerable. Reagan says we need it. Ford, Nixon. We've heard other clips. Over and over again, we've heard these clips of every president since Nixon, since we really had a problem with it. We've heard every president talk about it. And only through the free market are we getting anywhere close to it. And believe me, we're not close to it yet. But we're getting there through natural gas. President after president, year after year, 40 years of my lifetime, 39 years of my lifetime, spent watching the Middle East blow up after blow up. By the way, the Suez Canal. Guess how much? Suez Canal is where we have the couple of aircraft carriers out near there protecting all the oil shipments that come out of the Middle East from countries that absolutely hate us, dedicated to destroying the only democracy there, unless Iraq is really a democracy, I suppose, now. I don't even know. Maliki was actually here in America. It's not in the news because it's not a story anymore after all our soldiers that died fighting over this. It's not a story about what's going on in Iraq to see it through. 17 million barrels a day through the Suez Canal. Guess how many come to America? 2. 11%. Guess who pays for all the security of all that oil every day? We do. Our hardworking members of the military, especially the U.S. Navy, are patrolling the Middle East right now to secure that oil for China, France, Great Britain, name the country, and we get 11% of it. We pay all of it. Doesn't sound like a good deal. Sounds like Eisenhower's thought about the military-industrial complex has played into the politics of this. That maybe there's another reason that we're still talking about the Middle East. There's absolutely no reason today, in 2013, to be talking about, to even be doing this show, if we had any leadership or any plan that explained to the American people that, yes, going to total energy independence is not easy. But like, all you got to do is grab the man in the moon speech from Kennedy. I should have brought it in here. But we will do it, to paraphrase, not because it's easy, because it's hard. Because it's the best interest of America and Americans secure for national defense purposes and for the livelihood of our American citizens and for the jobs for our American citizens, energy independence. So we won't have to fight another war in the Middle East. And if we do, it won't be about an oil supply shock. Let me give you some statistics about what you're spending, by the way. You know, the American press, there's an article today and several articles about how, wow, isn't it great? We can see that oil prices and the price at the pump are coming down. We can see in the future, we're going to get down to $3 a gallon. Woo! $3 a gallon. Here we go. I mean, this is the ultimate situation where we've been warmed up on the stove like the frog, slowly but surely, to think that getting down to 3 is some massive victory. The average American, and this is Steve Laffey's Fixing America, Laffey Radio, tell your friends, this is important stuff. The average American, and just go get out your bill from last electric bill. Go save the receipts for 1 month of you and your wife, or your wife and you, whoever's listening, you spending money at the pump. But you're going to go spend, the average family of 4, $2,500, I bet, this year at gasoline. Then you're going to spend a couple of $1,000s or more on heating your home, which doesn't all come from gasoline and natural gas and so forth. So it's like $4,000 or $5,000. The average family of 4 in this country makes roughly $50,000 before taxes. What if the cost of energy was half that? Let me tell you what would happen. We'd be jumping around. There'd be a lot more jobs. It all works its way through the cycle. If price at the pump, and I know there's people out there listening, no, we've got to make it $9, like in Great Britain. How they do it? No. We're America. We're going to make it cheap. We're going to control it. We're going to own it. And that's why it's so critical that this natural gas success of fracking for natural gas, that the stuff stays in our country. And I know this is a non-free market idea, but it's a national defense thing that we should be explaining to people and get consensus on it. I'm not saying drive the price of natural gas down to 2 when no one can actually produce it. It hit down that level a couple of years ago when people were going broke. But at $3.50 to $4.50 price for a million cubic feet, that's still 75% discount to what's going on in the United Kingdom. Where do you think that the jobs are going to be created then? In America. That's where. And what would it be like if you had a $2,000, and the average American family had $2,000 extra in their pocket every year? More trips for vacations. More skis people would buy to go skiing. more jobs created in America. So we've got this low-cost advantage. And it brings us, we'll go back to the conclusion here, but you only got so much time, and I've got to get to solar. Solar is critically important. About a year and a half ago, I was at my great friend Ryan. He took me over to this big luncheon. They had this great speaker program, and a very, very smart guy whose name is Solkian Ishmael. Tough name to say. Guy worked at Yahoo. He spends all his time working on rapid growth and how to get people, young people out there to manage rapid growth, because that's what he did. He was at Yahoo for a long time. They had, not anymore, but they had rapid growth at the beginning. And so let's listen to him talk about solar. And I think, boss, that is clip 8. This is Solkian Ishmael on solar and the future of solar power.
This is solar energy. Now, the good news here, we tend to be kind of worried about technology sometimes. The solar energy is one of those things that's actually doing really well. Solar energy has hit that exponential curve, and it's doubling in its price performance every 22 months today. So today it's 0.12% of world energy supply. 2 years ago it was 0.06. In 2 years it'll be 0.25%. 2 years after that it'll be 0.5%. 2 years after that it'll be 1%. And then we're 7 doublings away, or about 16 to 20 years from 100% coverage. Because if you add up all of the energy and all of the fossil fuels in the entire world, it adds up to about 5 days of sunlight hitting the world. And that shifts the conversation instantly from a scarcity problem to a conversion problem. Right? And once you have decent energy, then desalinization, all sorts of other things become a lot more manageable. So on the energy side, we think in 2 to 3 decades, we will actually have abundant energy. We do not have an energy crisis coming along. And we've noticed, importantly, that once any technology hits that information enablement curve, it stays on that path. So these technologies are disseminated, they're distributable enough that it happens no matter what.
Happens no matter what. And that's what's happening with solar. And my conservative friends are rolling around, they were happy with the first half of this thing, but they hate solar. They have this thing against solar, probably because they heard about and it's true. The wrong way to handle solar was to just give money to president's friends like Solyndra and giant campaign contributors. We can go through a whole show on that. It's corruption, as we did it a little bit the other day. That is what happened. That does not mean that solar is not going to be worth it. It does not mean, again, for national defense purposes. We say this, our country is never really, 1812, our country was attacked. They burned the White House. Okay, right? And Andrew Jackson and the rest of them, they saved us, right? Madison, the whole gang. We really hadn't had a problem since then, but many countries have. But you want to be in a position, if you're running America and you're an American citizen, where no one even thinks about it. They can't take down America. Right now, nuclear power plants, big facilities, we all know where they are. What if everybody, and it looks as though everybody will, everybody had their own solar plant in their house? How are you going to take down the whole country? It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot more freedom. You're not dependent on those regulatory commissions. You just got solar. And so let's go through what he said. And this is actually happening, because if you're not into technology, this is what happens in technology. One of these things with chips, Intel chips and semiconductors, is this thing called Moore's Law, M-O-O-R-E-S, Moore's Law, a guy named Moore, I guess. But basically it talks about how every period of time in chips, you can double the power and half the cost. Well, solar is a chip. The solar wafers, I made one in college in a physics class. I made a very inefficient one, and Jimmy Carter, he had one on his roof at, it's like $60 a watt. Now we're down to $1 a watt. It's been a long time coming. But we should have, and we still should, spend money, our money, on raw research, on figuring out how to get these costs down, the way that we did to build a nuclear bomb in the Manhattan Project. We can do that. And we haven't been doing, we've done a little bit of it, but along the way, it's actually already happening. 0.1, this is when he spoke last year. So next year, 0.25% of the world's energy production is going to be in solar. And it sounds like, oh my God, Laffy, what are you talking about? 0.25%, 2016, 0.5. And this is it's going to happen fast. It's going to happen every 22 months. You're going to double the world's solar production. 2018, 1%. 2020, you heard it here first, 2%. 2022, 4%. 2024, 8%. 2026, 16%. 2028, 32%. 2029, I'll skip a year because of 22, I'll make it a year less, 64%. And then sometime in 2030, like the man says, we could have all of our energy supplied. It's so much energy hits the earth. It is not a scarcity problem. It's a conversion problem. We have no scarcity of sun. So we can do that. And we are going to do it. It's actually going to happen. And if that's going to happen, all you real left-wing environmental guys who actually like me saying about solar, right? Except when solar happens, you probably say, oh, it's terrible because you want to live in a cave. But you've got to understand that if it's only till 2030, right now, let's do coal. If we've only got to wait till 2030, let's do some coal. This is planning for the future. This is leadership. Explain to people, we're not stopping coal right now. Build some more plants. Yeah, of course, we want to make sure they're as clean as possible. Get the natural gas going. But almost all of it, or a lot of it's going to be supplanted by solar in the next several decades. How do we know? Look what's starting to happen. Just little articles come out all the time. Here it is. Solar panels become a standard for new homes. 6 of the 10 largest home builders are now including solar systems like they include granite counter cabinets. You know, KB Homes, wherever you're going to go look at these guys who build these big home lots around here. Maybe you want to be on my property one day, be some big home builders. They're putting them as a standard option. And when they put them as a standard option, people are putting them in, and then they're going to borrow off that whole house over 30 years. So the payback on solar, because the cost has come down so dramatically, even though some of these subsidies are going to run out, it won't matter anymore. And so the great news is we almost can't stop solar. There's so many people working on it now. It's becoming mainstream. People want it. And in fact, in our movie at one point, we talked about a guy came on, great guy in the movie, Fixing America, the movie. FixingAmericaMovie.com if you want to go there. But he came on and talked about the best solar panel would be a tree. And it would look like a tree. And I didn't think it was kooky or anything, but about a year after we made the movie, I picked up the Wall Street Journal in the lower left-hand column where they have this, column that's kind of funny. A 13-year-old kid won this World Design Award for solar panels because he made it look like a tree. A tree. I'm looking at reading the article going, wow, this is going to happen. So all these things are going to happen. But this is the plan. It's the T. Boone Pickens plan, the Steve Laffey plan. We've got the resources. Let's use them. And let's explain to people that it's not pretty. Let's drill more off the coast of California. I mean, why would they be? I mean, they do drill a little bit. Why would they be exempt? But there's going to be another BP explosion. So yes, the people who are drilling and fracking, we need to know what goes into that ground, and they've got to be able to guarantee putting not just the water, which we need lots of water for, but the ingredients that go into the ground, way below our aquifers, let's say. We got to know what they are. And they've got to have enough insurance, and they've got to be big enough that if they're wrong and if something goes wrong, that they can pay for it like BP could. And by the way, with BP, back to my original comment about my professor, the guy who said just leave it alone. Do you remember when all the oil just kind of disappeared? Like people couldn't find it anymore out in the Gulf? It was like, what happened to it? It dissipated. That's what's going to happen to it. We've covered a lot here. The show's going to wrap up soon. This is a plan. And it's a hard plan. We got to explain it to people over and over. We're going to do more shows we're going to take part of this and do a show on each one of parts of this because we've got to fix America, and energy is really important. I appreciate you all listening in. It's been Steve Laffey's Fixing America. Go right now. Go to the website on Facebook and like us. Send someone a clip, not even the whole. Send them a clip of one part of what we're doing here today. Let's spread this around because this is us fixing America. I may have the equipment, but it's all of us that are going to fix America, and darn it, we're going to do it. God bless you. I'll be back next week. We'll have more to talk about and more problems to fix. Steve Laffey signing off.
You've been listening to Steve Laffey's Fixing America radio program on the Laffey Radio Network. Fixing America is broadcast Monday through Friday afternoons at 3 p.m. right here at www.laffeyradio.com. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this broadcast without the express written consent of Laffey Network, LLC is prohibited.